I have a strategy that will make you thousands of dollars as a sports bettor. I'm going to run through this strategy, the three main steps to the strategy in this video that will turn you from an unprofitable to a profitable sports bettor. Let's run through it. Now, I've made some videos about CLV, about using funded sports betting, and about bankroll management. Now, let's get into in depth how to analyze these plays, how I look at these plays, and just a couple of the factors that I look into that are probably the biggest ones and the most important ones that you need to start looking into when actually analyzing a game. Now, for example, let's talk baseball. Let's say you're looking at an over-under or a money line or a spread. Now, an important thing to look into is line movement. If you look at a line, it's opened up at, let's say, minus 120. Now you're looking to bet on it and it's minus 140. That's something you need to take into account and look into. Now, lines are mainly moving because of sharp money rolling in, but can be moving due to injuries, due to change in weather, or due to other factors that could, potentially change a line. But one of the main factors of big line movement is because of sharp money narrowing down and getting that line as perfect as possible before a game. So you want to look deeply into that, look deeply into how the line's moving, and usually do not go against the line that's moving. So let's say the line's at under 8.5, it's moved down to under 8, and on some books you're starting to see it push down to 7.5. Taking the over in that spot would probably be a bad decision 99% of the time, unless for some reason you've really taken a deep dive into this game, you've analyzed it, and you found that there's value on the over, and it might be a buy low, sell high position. But again, most of the time when a line's moving, don't go against the line. Now, the second thing you need to look into is recency bias. For example, the other night, Paul Skeens was on the bump for the Pirates, who are not even close to as good of a team as the Dodgers, but due to the fact that it was Paul Skeens' name on the bump for the night against the Dodgers, the Pirates were actually opened up as a favorite. In any other game, they're sitting at plus 200 to plus 250 of an underdog, and while the Dodgers are sitting at a heavy favorite. Now, I locked in on the Dodgers due to the fact that a lot of recency bias was put on Paul Skeens' name. The line started moving towards the Dodgers and it ended up actually closing at a Dodgers favorite. So we locked in while the Dodgers are still an underdog and we closed as a favorite. Sometimes recency bias is a massive part of sports betting. You got to look into where lines are overvalued because public money is being put on them and Vegas knows they can set a line slightly off to kind of bait the public into betting on these plays. You hear people talk about sports betting traps, and that is absolutely a real thing. Vegas will sometimes set lines that they know that they can bait the public into taking. So, for example, when you see Paul Skeens in the bump, when you see a team with a higher or better record against a team with a worse record, and they are somehow the underdog in the game, it's for a reason. Realistically, they should usually be an even higher underdog than you think, but because of the recency bias around a couple players or a team or the record of the team or the recent playing, a line will move. Vegas will change it. Now, the third thing, this is also a pretty important one that you want to look into. The third step in this strategy is looking into the stats, all the stats, and what stats could potentially be important in your matchup. For example, the other night when we locked in the Dodgers, there was a slight wind blowing out, again with Paul Skeens on the bump. The slight wind blowing out helped the Dodgers to, potentially get 1 or 2 home runs, which they are a heavily home run reliant team. They hit more home runs than almost anyone in the league, but they also get as many people on base as anybody in the league. They are actually number one at leaving people on base. So without some home runs to get some people in, they are struggling. So you have to be able to rely on a couple of home runs. So I knew with some 6-mile-per-hour wind heading out to center field, it would increase the chance of home runs. You got to look into the weather. How are the pitches going to be going? Curveball, sliders, is he a lefty, righty on the bump? That all matters because every single pitch that a pitcher throws, every single hit that a hitter hits can be dependent upon, can change. Baseball is a game of inches. Everything could change just in a small wind. So again, while it's not as massive because Vegas is already looking into these things, you definitely want to know them and take a look into them when analyzing a game, especially these smaller games like baseball where Vegas is not putting as much attention into these lines. You still want to take a deep dive into some of these stats before you pull the trigger on taking a bet. So those are the 3 main things you really want to look into. You want to look into line movements, you want to look into recency bias, and you want to look into the regular stats and find value. Where you got to come to is a point where you say, I think the line is minus 130. The line's really sitting at minus 115, so I think there's value. And sports betting is a guess and check game. You go back later and you see if you beat the closing line, and if you did, you were on the right side. If you didn't, you weren't. So how sports betting works in this sense is you need to take bets that you think you have value on. You're never going to know 100%, but you will be able to guess and check later by looking at line movement. So if you're beating closing lines at 60 to 80%, you're crushing it. You've got nothing to worry about. And if you're not beating the closing lines, if you're actually going negative on them, then your guess and check strategy, your sports betting strategy is not working properly. So while I say guess and check, obviously it's not a guess, it's a very educated guess. But again, you are looking to see later if you beat the closing line. And that is the telltale of if you are actually finding good bets. Not if you win or lose, because you can win or lose in any scenario. But if you're beating the closing lines, you are increasing your implied probability and you are adding an edge. And that is how you will make money betting on sports and bring extra thousands of dollars to the bankroll month after month.